We've had other BAs come along and say, I really want to host a workshop. I want to do, this talk. I've got this story to share. Can you help me do that? And that's where the joy of being a capability lead is for me, because you've built that environment where others feel, supported and safe and secure enough to come and go, I'd like to share, I'd like to contribute, and I want to do this willingly. You're not twisting my arm to do it. It's something I want to do of my own free will.
Welcome to the Inside Business Analysis podcast. I'm your host, Tanda Jacobs, and I am here with Dr. Craig Docherty. How are you doing today, Craig?
I'm doing very well, Tando. Thanks for having me on. It's a pleasure to be here.
No, thank you for being on. I'm quite excited for our conversation today and just kind of the things that we're going to talk about. But before we dive into that wonderful world of what you do, just briefly tell us, just a little bit about who you are, your journey as a BA, and what you currently do now.
Sure, no worries at all. So I guess started out as a BA from non-traditional route, but what BAs start from a traditional route, right? In that I initially wanted to be a warfare officer in the Royal Navy, right? So about as far away from business analysis as you can get. Didn't get that. Ended up going to uni to become a software engineer. Realised at the end of that degree that programming and I, whilst I could do it, we weren't the best friends, so I went to the doctorate, looking at serious games, tree and plant health research, all that kind of fun stuff together, before landing in a technology graduate scheme program where they had a business analysis component alongside a developer and tester. Read up on BA, realised it was very close to what I really enjoyed in the doctoral world, which was speaking to people, helping to get to the bottom of an issue, figuring out ways that we might solve that issue, all those fun things together. Thought, that sounds good, want to try that. That was what I then selected after the graduate scheme and the role I wanted to go into. Then that was in a global financial services firm, and maybe about 2.5 years in that whole scheme and time together, I moved on to the organisation I'm in now, who are a worldwide consultancy firm, a smaller firm that you may have heard of, may not have heard of, called BGSS. But I started with them a year and a half ago now, so March 22, and within about 6 months, I became a capability lead for analysis in Scotland. Co-capability lead, actually. There's two of us in Scotland that do that particular role.
Awesome. Do you still know how to code by any chance?
Yeah, it doesn't really leave you, which is quite useful, depending on some of the projects you get put on, and you're going, okay, so you're doing this, that, the next thing, okay, I see what you're doing there, or, oh, cool, we're talking Git commands, right, let's get into that, or, your CI/CD pipelines and all that kind of stuff. Occasionally see the developer's eyes go a bit shocked, like, oh, you know what code, you know what you're talking about? Because it can be a bit of a rarity for some BAs to be more tech-focused than business-focused.
That's interesting. And what's your take on this? I'm going to ask you just a random question. Would you think there's any value in BAs learning basic coding?
I think in a lot of ways there can be. I mean, the question is whether it's basic coding or is it basics of technology. If we go basic coding, certainly some things like SQL could be really useful. We sometimes do data analysis, and SQL will help with that. But if it's learning the basics of technology, there's really great benefit there, because you're understanding sometimes some of the pain that developers and testers have to go through, architects and others. You're able to converse more in their language to get more of the why of the situation in terms that are familiar to them. And that really helps bridge the gap. But if nothing else, though, when you learn to program language, independently, you learn more about logical thinking and how you connect things together, and that can be very, very, very useful. Actually, a lecturer once said to me, and he was very true about it, is that programming is the most obedient pet you'll ever have. It'll do precisely what you tell it to do, even if you don't intend it to do that. And that's useful for us when we're thinking about the assumptions we make, the stories we're putting together, the strategizing we do, just having that in the back of their head that what we intend might not always happen.
Yeah. I mean, I personally, I thought about learning coding, actually, to be honest with you, albeit a basic level. SQL was definitely helpful. That was kind of where most people pointed me towards as well. But I'll be honest, it's one of those things that, although I understand it and I get it, I just haven't had an opportunity to put it into practice in a project. Let me put it that way. So it's one of those situations where, yeah, I've learned it, but actually I'm not really doing it in my role as a BA. So it's a knowledge skill that I have, but not actually put it in practice.
No, that's totally fair. It's often a joke that I'll make that something's gone far wrong if I'm sitting coding, or far right.
True,
Because I mean,
true.
you'll get, like, I guess, low code and no code platforms, Power Automate and the
Yeah,
like, where having that knowledge of how things can connect together, but you can extend things, you can pull things together in different ways. That can be really useful as well.
yeah, no, facts. So Craig, one of the reasons, well, the main reason, in fact, that I brought you on this show was to kind of speak about your current role as a capability lead in business analysis. First of all, can you just kind of, in layman's terms, just kind of tell us what a capability lead is and how that links into business analysis?
Sure. So it's actually a very, most questions are interesting, but that one really is, because much like, no two BAs are the same, no two capability leads will be the same. So broadly, a capability or community of practice, or whatever else you want to call it, is just a collection of business analysts that you're working with. That could be in your local office, it could be regional, it could be organization wide. And often you'll find, different strata, different sort of breakdowns as you move through organizations. What do we do with there? We help. Again, it's organization dependent. So in my role specifically, Matt and I really look at how we can help grow the capability. We're involved a lot with recruitment, but we do a lot of the where are, like, what's coming next? How do we bring that knowledge in? How do we encourage and foster, like, an environment where our analysts can go, I want to do a workshop on X, or I want to do a talk on Y, and how can we make that happen for them? So we do a lot of that stuff, but it really depends organization to organization in what you do. Other previous roles, I've seen capability or community of practice leads who are more line managers, who will have more of that
Mm.
review setting stuff, or they'll approve holidays and all that kind of good people management stuff that goes along with it. So it's horses for courses in a lot of ways. I think you said something about how does it relate back to the job as a business analyst as well, right?
Yeah. And
So
do you perform business analysis still in that
oh
role?
yeah. Yeah.
Right.
So this is the other thing. So in BGSS, our capability leads are on client. We get out. So I'm still at the coalface. I'm working away doing, I think, product ownership stuff, more aligned to that at the moment these days. But yeah, I mean, I'm still writing stories. I'm speaking to clients. I'm running workshops, designing them, doing that. There's no difference to me, to any of the other analysts that I work with. From that perspective, the only main difference is that I have that additional layer of, I guess, responsibility to help push things forward and to foster and build that environment.
Hmm. So let's just say, right, I just paint a picture
Mhm.
of your role a bit more here. So I'm part of a team, and just this is a scenario. I'm part of a team of in my organization. There's a few of us business analysts on the team, but we kind of all do our own thing. We're all assigned our own little projects. So we work in silos almost, and maybe we meet up every now and again just to kind of have a chat, but nothing formal.
Yep.
If you're to look at that scenario, what would you say to us to do differently?
Well, that's a presumptive question there, because it assumes that it's not working for you. So that'd be the first question: is what you're doing achieving an outcome you want to achieve? And it's probably a theme we'll touch on several times during the conversation. Is, as analysts, we can often confuse outputs for outcomes, because we're often seeing doing outputs instead of what those outcomes are. So to pull it back to that, is first question is, what are your outcomes? Are you just wanting to be social and build that, or are you looking to develop your skills and learn from each other and self-critique and that kind of the world? If it's the former, great, you're doing that already, keep at it. If it's the latter, well, what can you do more formally? How can you start breaking down those barriers? Can you do things like small lunch and learns to each other? Can you bring in others who have that specialist knowledge as well to really start learning about each other's worlds? Maybe having things on a regular basis, having a formal declaration as well that you are a capability. Even just saying the thing, hey, we exist, we're a group, and this is what we're about, can add a lot of legitimacy and indeed motivation to continue engaging with it.
Right. Yeah. Which makes sense. And I was thinking from the perspective of, I guess, to your point, actually, it's really about outcomes, because I think maybe there's a silent pressure that kind of says we don't have a communities of practice, or we don't have this other big title of what we do. We just casually meet up every couple of months or whatever it is, and just have a chat about what we're working on or things that we found are good for us to put in practice. But there's nothing formal, right? There's nothing that's set in stone. But also, I think the bigger question, as you've asked, actually, is it working for us, first of all? And do we need anything that is formal? If not, then there's no need to complicate it.
Yeah, and that's often the gist of it, right? And I think people sometimes confuse the lack of action or doing nothing as bad, right? And it's perfectly fine to do nothing if what you're doing, say in this informal scenario, you're meeting once a quarter, you're going for, like bowling or a meal, or you're doing something social, you're having a chat, you're saying all that, and that's meeting what you're looking for and it's hitting all the boxes, that's fine, you know? Likewise, if you're a group that wants to meet every week to showcase the latest work you're working on and get, hey, I'm trying to write this user story and I can't quite get it to land right. Can somebody help? Again, that's fine. Is it meeting the goals and the outcomes that you're trying to set for yourself?
Mm. So that was at the team level. Have you done any kind of work around, I guess, different levels of within the organization? So by this, I'm thinking, you know, there's that kind of capability within the team, a small team of BAs, but then there's maybe a wider lens of the BA capability over multiple teams or cross-functional teams spread across various functions or various teams and things like that.
Yeah, actually, welcome to one of the things I'm working on at the moment. Actually, so I've got the pleasure of a whole bunch of great counterparts across BGSS. Pretty much every office we have has a BA capability lead in it. So I've got equivalents, in London, for example, in Leeds, then in Wales, Portugal, wherever we are. And we are really getting into the habit now of developing our ways of working together. BGSS, one of the wonderful things actually is we have a very individualistic office culture. We're still very friendly with each other. We collaborate amazingly, but each office has the freedom to have its own flavor. And within your office, you've got the freedom to have your own flavor again as a capability. So we're now really getting to that stage of going, well, what you're doing down in, say, Sheffield, there's some really interesting lessons going. There's some workshops. Great. How do we replicate that in Scotland? How do we bring that to our analysts? And likewise, if we're doing something really cool up here, how do we share that with our colleagues over in like Lisbon or Porto to make sure that we're sharing that great knowledge? And a lot of it comes down to communication. Actually, even just asking that question of, hey, is this something you'd like to do? We're finding that people are, yeah, that'd be great. We've got a lot of great stories to share. And you've got a lot of great stuff to share with us as well. So just starting off that conversation can be really useful. We're also doing cross-functional stuff as well. Something that I often joke about internally is that, opportunistic expansion, that everyone can be a BA. We're just the BAs or the better BAs, as it were. We just do it more often. And, we're doing like a little road trip around all the capabilities in Scotland, going, how is your BA working for you? What can we do to make life better for you? What is it you wish you knew about us? Because often, where I'm going on here, but often we BAs are very, very guilty of doing stuff hidden away. We'll say we go create a user story, we'll almost do the magic under the table, then go, da-da, here's a finished product. And there's a lot of hidden stuff that goes on there, right? It's otherwise known as, the duck paddling away. It looks sweet on the surface, but furiously paddling under, right? And we need to do better at getting that information out there and engaging and showcasing what we can do and how we can help. And so that cross capability stuff has been really valuable. Gained a lot of interesting insights into how we can operate better. We're operating very well and we're collaborating amazingly, but there's always more you can do, right? And it's very good to get those insights.
Yeah, and I'm just thinking back to my initial question, right? So, at what point would you say? Because my initial question was kind of this small team, and then we've kind of gone all the way to the other side of
Yeah.
like your current example of effectively nationally or internationally spread teams of BAs. At what point would you say that a BA team should then actually start to formalize their BA capability and start to really introduce kind of these communities of practice or some or similar?
It's a good question. I think even as small as sort of like 2 to 3 people, because there's no bad time to start. If you start with two or
Mm.
three people, you can get some stuff going. Then, hey, let's say, hey, we're going on a recruitment drive. We've got another 5 or 6 BAs to add to this hypothetical team. They can join a community. It's something you can talk about. You can showcase it. You can look for other communities outside of the organization, even through Meetup and other areas, YBA, of course, the Young Business Analysts, to go and have a chat and find other people and say, hey, we exist. Can we make friends with more people? So there's never really too small a number to start with. And even if you're sitting there with 15, 20 BAs in your department or whatever, and you don't have one yet, great, start. The best time to start after right now is now, as it were. So
Yeah,
don't
yeah,
the
yeah,
fact you've not
yeah,
got one put you off from starting one.
yeah. So let's just say someone is listening to this and they're thinking, okay, they would like to start something in their team or in their organization. How would you do it?
First off, just say you want to do it. I think there's sometimes a conception that the capability lead is often the best analyst. That doesn't have to be the case at all, right?
Mm,
I will
right.
quite happily say that several of my colleagues are way more talented BAs than I am. They've had more years in industry, they've had more varied experiences, they've got some really amazing tools and techniques and tricks that they can pull out to use. And there's a lot to learn from them. Where I come into the picture is I was like, I want to be able to shape a capability. I want to be able to create that environment. I want to support people and, achieve that outcome. And that's what drove me to the position. So if you're someone there who's like, I've only been a BA for a little bit, but I really want to see this happen, then go for it. Worst case, you've learned how to do something differently next time. Best case scenario, you've just set up a capability that will help others grow alongside you, will give benefit back, and will hopefully be a lasting impression on the organization after you're gone as well. And what more can we ask for?
Yeah, and you know what? I think I love the fact that you touched on that the person who's leading the capability, so to speak, um, doesn't it doesn't necessarily need to be the brightest of the BAs in the bunch. It sounds more like you have to be the one willing to effectively put in the work above your day job of investing into the capability of your organization in whatever way, shape, or form that looks like. So I'd imagine for some people that could be knowledge sharing and kind of saying, let's all learn best from each other. For other people, it might be actually that maybe we just need to share some ideas around how we standardize our approach as BAs because it's too sporadic or our value is kind of all over the place depending on who you're speaking to and things like that. So it almost sounds like there just needs to be that facilitator role almost to get the conversation started.
No, definitely that you've got it spot on. Because again, sometimes people will confuse the role of leadership with saying, you must go in a certain way, and you're at the front pushing forward. It's really not. I kind of like to be in the middle or the back. You're saying here's where we like to get to. How did we get there? We're working on an interesting project for I think Global BA Day. I think 1st of November, if that's still happening this year, and it's amazing. We said here's where we want to go, and everyone's like, great, we'll pick things up, we'll take this on, we'll do that, and that for me has been the beauty of building this capability up. And I should say, I've not built it from the ground up. There was a colleague of mine, Stephen Marshall, who really built it from the ground up in Scotland and done an amazing job, built like a really solid groundwork for Matt and I to then build on. Our jobs would be so much more challenging if we didn't have that foundation. And we're able to come together and say, right, here's where we're going. Everyone's picking up, everyone's getting engaged and involved, and that's amazing to see. We've had other
Yeah.
BAs come along and say, I really want to host a workshop, I want to do this talk, I've got this story to share, can you help me do that? And that's where the joy of being a capability lead is for me, because you've built that environment where others feel supported and safe and secure enough to come and go, I'd like to share, I'd like to contribute, and I want to do this willingly. You're not twisting my arm to do it. It's something I want to do of my own free will.
So I'm just had a recollection in a previous role I once had, and we actually tried something like this, some form of I guess intern within the BA team. Let's all come together and kind of effectively help each other out, share some knowledge, share some experiences, but also just touch base with each other effectively. One of the biggest challenges, actually, when I look back, was prioritizing this over your project work or whatever work you had. So, honestly, 9 times out of 10, people would just be like, "Oh, I'll skip that. I've got a workshop to plan, or I've got this going on, or that going on." How do you if the question I'm trying to get to then is, how do you effectively get the BAs in the team and in the organization engaged, involved, excited about doing something like this within the team, and then them feeling like, actually, yeah, I may be busy, because we all are, but I'm happy to put my time and effort into this 1 hour block of whatever it is this looks like.
So I think in both answers I'll give here, the answer is start with why. So Simon Sinek's classic, start with why. So the first why here is try and understand why they're not coming. Because often people will be busy on client, as you say, or on project work. There's meetings, there's stories, there's all the rest of it. The question is, why is that hour not available? Is there something we can do there too? Is it the time wrong? Is it, that we do it every week, and actually having it every fortnight might be better because you've got a standing meeting, every fortnight, for example, and you're missing it. It needs to be odd weeks or whatever it looks like. So understanding that can go a long way, right? Understanding in the why as well of what people like to see. So are you consistently doing a lecture from your capability lead, and people are like, this is boring because I know this already. You're treating us like we're children. I want to be able to talk about my stuff. Like, when do I get the chance to share what I'm doing and get advice? And, is that going up? The other half of that, start with why, is articulating why your product is there, like why it exists, like why you want it to be a success. Then you go to obviously the how you're going to do that, and then what comes out of it. People are already, they're bought on with you, And if you haven't listened to Simon Sinek's TED Talk on it, I would thoroughly recommend it. It's a very, very good read, as is the book. It's just starting with why helps a lot. But you're right, it's a common problem, and hopefully by understanding some of the challenges or reasons people might not attend, and working around those and putting the time and effort in to produce content they want, or supporting others to do so, people start coming along. And there will be, high points and low points of attendance, but having that why in there really goes a long way.
So, yeah, and what would you say your why is for your role?
Good question. Depends on the lens, really. So the why I do what I do is because I want to see people grow and develop, and to support them, to showcase the great work that we do. I mean, I could go down the entire list of BAs that I work with, and every single one of them have done like amazing things. They've got great stories to tell. I want those stories to come to the fore. I want us to have that, that environment to do so. And the capability supports that.
Strong. I love it. What other problems do you typically face then when you're kind of embarking on this capability lead journey, and you're trying to effectively get the BA team to almost self-invest in themselves, and also work together as a team and get involved in something like a community of practice? Apart from the problem that we just spoke about, are there any other challenges that you typically face?
So I think the challenge we talk about is probably going to be one that's common to all BAs at all points in their career, and that is, what am I coming in with? What am I expecting, or what does everyone else know, and how do I bridge that gap? I mean, even from listening to a few episodes of your podcast and listening to some of the guests on who are BAs, we've all got different routes in, and we've all got different backgrounds and experiences. So no two BAs will appear with the same background. And understanding that and being able to bridge that gap and going, it's fine if you've not had too much experience, doing complex process mapping, and your work's been more in personas. That's great. How do we bring you in? How do we support you? And how do we make sure there's something of value for you there? And, that's probably the biggest challenge, because people do come in with different expectations and different experiences.
Yeah, no, I completely can see why that would be a challenge, because you're trying to find common ground and not lose people who are maybe too much on one side and other people who are too much on the other side. You're trying to figure out, how do we cater the best to a wide range of skill sets in our organization and teams, and also a wide range of positions potentially. Right, you may have a team of junior BAs, a team of BAs, a team of senior BAs, kind of thing. So you're trying to then figure out, how do we make this work for everyone effectively, right?
And something, I guess, it's a solution to that problem, right? Because I realized that was a whole, here's a problem without a solution, right? That was a preamble. Don't worry. So I guess that the short answer is there is no one solution to this, right? Because every example will be different. But something that I've been mulling over and looking to is how you might use a capability map or matrix to resolve that scenario. Now, a lot of these matrices and maps are used as a which level do you rank in and how do you get to the next one, and you've got to be at a certain level to kind of be a particular grade. I don't particularly like that because it forces everyone to learn everything in that level to then proceed when you might not be using it. I was going over some notes the other day, and it's like I remember learning about CatWo in one of the exams I did, but I've not used it since. But if I had to, be able to evidence a particular usage of CatWo at a certain level to get to a particular grade, then you're just shoehorning it in for the reason, right? Which is bad. So the theory around the capability map then is, can you use it to guide best practice or points of individual progression? Because you might be amazing at public speaking, right? And you want to tighten up a little bit of that. But you might not be too great at designing workshops and you might be at a quote unquote lower level, but there's some great learning opportunities there and some great ways for you to upskill yourself, but also to engage the rest of the capability and go, hey, BA over there, you put on an amazing workshop last week. How did you go about doing that? I want to learn how to do that. Can you tell me this? Can you show me? Can you teach me, mentor me, whatever that looks like? And you open up more of a dialogue about how you want to grow and develop, rather than, oh, I need to meet certain numbers or I need to get in a certain box. Because, as BAs, thinking inside the box doesn't really work sometimes. You've really got to be outside the box, and that should really start with the capability as well.
Yeah, and I think the picture that I'm getting in my head here is that, when a team has something like a capability lead, obviously you can name it whatever you want, but if you have somebody in the team who is this person who effectively is leading the capability of the team, or leading or facilitating, that's the word, the discussions within the team about how do we work best together, it then opens up the door for that type of thought process to happen, for somebody to kind of say, yeah, I'm not so great at this. I've always wanted to know about this particular thing, or upskill in this area. I might as well ask it within the group of the team, because I guess without that opportunity, the communities of practice, for instance, sometimes those questions just kind of get buried at the back of our heads, or we just never really get the chance to ask them.
Yeah, it's an interesting one because I think failure, I'm going to use that in quote marks, obviously we're off camera so you can't see it, the joy of podcast medium, but as you say, not willing to say, oh, I'm struggling with something, or I really need to learn something, it can be seen akin to people going, I'm not good at that, or I failed at that, which isn't great. And the more we can get out of that mindset of going, okay, I don't know it today, but how do I learn it tomorrow? How do I get there? What can I do? There's few things I love more than going, oh, great, I don't know that. How do I learn it? Or that's amazing, that's brand new. I've just learned something, right? That is powerful in of itself. And if you can structure a capability around that and build that freedom to express and go, I really would like to learn this. I just don't know it. I know I probably should, or it looks interesting to me, or I've seen it in a workshop or something or webinar. You're onto a winner, because as you grow, as the capability grows, then the output, the quality of the output grows, and whether that's an internal focused team or you're in a consultancy or whatever, you're delivering better outcomes. And as we all know, the better the business analysis outcomes, the better the outcomes in general, right? Not that we think very highly of ourselves, of course, but
of course not. Of course not. So just think about a slightly different direction here, right? Let's just say I'm a senior leader, whatever job title, but I'm a senior leader of sorts, and I feel as though this idea of, I guess, the team spending time together and sharing ideas, meeting up maybe once every 2 weeks for an hour and a half, whatever that looks like. I don't know. I'm just feeling like it's a waste of time. We have too many priorities and projects to deliver. Surely BAs are just here to deliver projects. What? How would you sell that to me, to say, actually, if you don't have this capability, this is the cost of it?
that's a very good question. I mean, natural response is to go to something like the IIBA's, annual BA report and say, look, here's what the studies say. But, people who have BA capabilities, here's what they can do, here's how we get there. Assuming in this scenario, you might have your informal group that we mentioned earlier, because you're trying to get that off the ground and your common theme here. Just showcasing that, saying, this is what it's given already. If you can have a concrete example, and it can be even a small stakes example of, we had, project that was coming to deadline, and we couldn't get some stories written for it. We came together as a group and were able to support each other through it. Project got delivered successfully. If we didn't have this, that wouldn't have happened. That can sometimes be enough to illustrate what you're trying to do. But equally, it's even just pointing to what other companies do as well, because parity is always a good place to be. If you see that there is an organization who's very vocal about their BA capability, they're hosting events, like, well, we're in the same field. Why don't we have that? What is it they've got that we don't? Bringing those sorts of things to the fore as well. But often just a nice logical statement of going, here's why it's important and what it means to us as individuals, as a team, and the benefits you get from it can be enough. Obviously, it'll depend on your situation and sort of who your senior leaders are.
Yeah. No, great. So, by the way, I love your answers. Very practical as well, and very direct, and making it very clear. The one thing I always try and ensure, particularly for those who are listening, is that at least they get something tangible out of this, right? Something they can go back to their organizations and their teams with, and effectively make a change, or a positive change for their teams. So I know we touched on this earlier, but I'm trying to think kind of really practically here around the person who is feeling the nudge to be a form of capability lead in their team, and they're really feeling strongly about it. They want to do it. They think it would be a great thing for the team to come together every so often, because, like I said, we all work in silos. We all work on our own little projects. We all do our own little things. But it'd be great if we just kind of come together, and obviously we all do business analysis, so we can learn from each other, surely. I've now got my why, and that's why I want to do it, right? To learn from each other, to ensure that we're all growing and all developing as a team, but also give the opportunity for people to ask questions that they normally may not have the room to ask, because, again, you're in your own little project. You have no other BA to turn to, but this can be that for you. So that's my why, right? I'm scheduling calls once every 2 weeks on a Tuesday, whatever time. I invite everyone over. I'm shouting out to everyone. I'm saying, hey, everyone, this is something I'm starting for the benefit of us. And then I've sold it to the leadership team. They're in agreement. They're saying, yeah, I think it's a great thing, actually, now that you've spoke to us about it. And the BAs are also thinking, yeah, that's a great idea. I'm happy that someone is doing it, right? And that someone being me. I get to the meeting now. What am I doing? Am I coming into it with an agenda? Is it open forum? Am I going into it almost, I guess, leading the discussions with asking questions, or what does that look like?
Again, it's one of those how long is a piece of string questions. But I'll give you some practical examples of what could happen. So let's assume you've got a mixed audience of, some junior BAs through senior BAs. Some have been with the organization for a while, some are relatively new. And that's the sort of environment that you've got. I would say a semi-structured approach would be the best way to go. Naturally, you'd want to open with a here's why we're here, thank you all for coming along, and close out with next steps and actions. But for these first meetings, these first stepping stones, people need to have a sense of ownership, right? You might be leading it and you might be structuring it and, scheduling it and doing all the scaffolding. But ultimately, the capability lead is the least important person in that room. It's the BAs around you who are the most important people. Without them, you don't have a capability, right? So some form of lean coffee, for example, would be a great way. You just a simple, if you've never done a lean coffee before, it's a 3-lane Kanban, a 3-column Kanban rather. What ideas do you want to talk about? Which talk is currently actively spoken about or has been done? And what actions are we taking away afterwards? So 3 columns. Do a bit of voting, or generate ideas first, to do a little bit of voting on which ones you want. People get 5 minutes to talk, and the group can vote if they want to extend it a bit further, and you're off to the races then. So you can get some introductions that way, some topics you might to talk about. But equally, you can use it to generate ideas as well. So you might go, well, what do we want for the future? Where do we see ourselves going? And then, I guess, future activities, assuming that first meeting, well, you've got some stuff coming. Something, we did internally in one of the teams that worked really well for us was developing a manifesto. So we sat down, 2 of my colleagues, Michael and Jill, led the session. I think it was Jill's idea initially, great session. And we kind of worked out as a team, like, what is it we want to be? What do we want to be known for? How do we see ourselves in context of our region and in the organization and in terms of the work that we do? And that became like a rallying point for us. We could point back to and say, this is why we exist. This is why we do what we do. And it, gives us something to anchor everything else off of. So definitely start with some sort of ideation session, but brainstorming, lean coffee, even something incredibly fun, like an icebreaker I love to use, actually, it's useful for so many things, is 100 ways to squish a lemon. It was a colleague of mine, Harry at DeVet, who gave this to me, actually. And the notion is you've got like a minute to 5 minutes, depending on how many people you've got, to come up with as many ways to squish a lemon as you'd like. Now, it is as chaotic as it sounds, right? And the only rule is you're not allowed to duplicate. So if I was to say I'm going to hit it with a hammer, you couldn't say you were going to hit it with a hammer, but you could say you hit it with 2 hammers or a sledgehammer. You can, do an expansion on it, but you can't do the exact same. And it is, 5 minutes of frantic, you're writing post-its, you're putting them on the wall, you've got someone going, we've already had that, kind of that. And you just start seeing people go to really weird and wonderful places for ideas, but the brain's going, the juices are flowing, and you go, right, now what are we doing with the capability? What session do we want to work on? What tools and techniques do we want to hit? Where do we want to go? Things like that are great.
Love it. 100 ways to squish a lemon. Love that. I love that so much. I'm definitely stealing that one.
By all means, feel free. It is absolutely great. I've used it with clients. I've used it with BAs. I've used it with others. And every time it's like, some people are like, that's just going to work. And after they're like, that was amazing. Can we do it again?
Yeah.
So they do
honestly,
like it.
I can really see that being like what on earth is he talking about? And then 5 minutes later, well, this is so much fun.
Yeah, I mean, I normally get that first part fairly often, so don't worry about that in the slightest. But that's how it goes.
Yeah. So there you go. If you're starting a capability, set up your first meeting and ask the question, or let's talk about 100 ways to squish a lemon and then see what happens afterwards. There you go. That's a great start.
Can I give another practical tip as well, Tando?
Of course.
But from the other side, if you're sitting in that senior leadership position and someone comes to you and you're like, this BA capability thing, what is it? They're trying to do things, people, they should be working, that kind of approach. Because there's some really practical tips here as well, and really based on my own experience as a CL. And it's, I guess, akin to, if you've heard of the book Turn the Ship Around by David Marquet, it's the I intend model, effectively. I feel empowered by my leaders to say, I intend to do a workshop with the BAs on this day for this time to teach them X. And we get, okay, cool. On you go. Enjoy. Like, you have everything you need to do it. And having that mentality as a leader to trust that the people who are in the position have the best interests of their capability, as well as what you're looking for from them to deliver, is super important. Not sitting there going, right, I want to see exactly what you're doing before you deliver it, or okay, are you sure you should be doing that? Like, go relate this back to 20 different company goals for me, or OKRs, and see how that comes out. Just stripping things away and trusting that we've got our best intentions in mind, and we want to do the best we can for each other and for the organization. And you see, that's certainly been the experience that I've had from local and indeed leadership above that, again, like senior leadership, I guess. So it really does benefit when you see it. It's powerful when it happens.
Thanks. No, thank you for that one. Very, 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 very great. So, Craig, it has been such a pleasure talking to you about this topic. I think that when I'll put my hands up, I've always heard the phrase BA capability.
Yeah.
And honestly, I don't even know what that means. Is that another skill set? Is that another toolkit? Like, what on earth is that all about? But what our conversation today has hopefully helped to remove some of the mist around that terminology and really kind of clarify what that is and what that looks like. But also practically then, what does it mean when we try to actually invest in our BA capability? So thank you for sharing your expertise and wisdom in this.
No worries at all. Thank you very much for having me on. It's always been a dream to get on a podcast, actually. So that's one ticked off the bucket list. Open for others if you want me. So that's not a problem.
Love it. So final 2 questions. The first one is that if people want to connect with you and learn more about what you do, or just bounce ideas off you of what we spoke about today, what's the best place for them to find you?
LinkedIn actually is the best place to get me. Just search for Craig Docherty or Craig W. Docherty. You will see me there.
In fact, I will put the link to your LinkedIn profile in the show notes.
Perfect.
And Final question then is, why do you love what you do as a capability lead?
It has to come back to what I said earlier. Seeing people, I guess, grow out their shells and growing and developing is really amazing. Sometimes a lot of the work we do, it seems like you're not progressing very far because you're putting in meetings, you're doing this, and you're like, are we actually getting to where we need to be?
Mm,
But we had a situation recently where we had a new BA join, and they attended one of the first analysis and practice sessions that we set up, and it was run by another colleague of ours. Analysis and practice is effectively ways for us to see how we might do different skills and how we all do those together, and then learn from each other to get best practice. And this colleague who had just joined came to us and said, "I really enjoyed that session. I'd really like to
mm,
do my own. How do I go about doing that?" And the fact that we were able to see that this person was maybe 4 weeks, 5 weeks into the organization and is asking to take part in the capability in that way, that was like a really powerful moment of, wow, we're achieving what we're trying to achieve. We're building that environment. We are, because capability is such a clinical word. It really is a community, right? We're building that
yeah,
community of people who
yeah.
are willing to share their capabilities and share their skills in a really visible way.
Yeah, no, I love that, and I think most, if not all, BAs would probably share with that what you've said, and also would, I think, fundamentally we all love to help people, but we would all love to make a difference, and sometimes making a difference goes beyond on the projects we work on. And I think what we spoke about today gives people the opportunity to make a difference in their teams. And obviously, then inadvertently on the projects that they work on and the organization at large, et cetera, et cetera. So, yeah, I've really, really enjoyed this conversation. Hopefully, people have been inspired, like I am, to get involved. You don't have to be the leader, but at least get involved, do a talk, do something within your team to effectively invest in the capability of the team and continues to grow as BAs. So thank you so much, Craig, for coming on this podcast. I really enjoyed it.
Thank you for having me, Tando. It's been a pleasure.